All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the ECEF webinar for October. It's lovely to see you all. Looks like we have a decent sized group today, which is great. And I need to remember to slow down a little bit because we have a Spanish interpretation channel. And so you can click on, I believe it should be under interpretation. I'm not sure what it looks like on your end. And you can select the Spanish channel. And so I just need to remember that there's someone interpreting, and it's hard to remember when I can't hear them. So I'm gonna try to talk a little slower than usual. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if that works. I always tend to have difficulties with that for some reason, but I think we'll be good to go this time. All right, so sharing. And there we go. Okay, great. Jeff, I always appreciate your thumbs up because I can see you with your camera on. That's super helpful. Okay. All right. So I think I got everything on the right screen this time, so we're good to go. So I'll go to the next slide. So that's just the welcome slide. It's the October 2024 ECEF monthly webinar. And for our agenda today, the welcome just means this period where we're letting people in and greeting and giving people the opportunity to sign in with the sign-in sheet. And then we'll do a quick icebreaker. Then we will have a fiscal update from Brandon. And then I will give a quick general update. And then the bulk of the time is for Lorelei and Alexis, the evaluation team. And then at the end, from 12 to 12:15, whoever would like to stay for questions is welcome to stay. And if you have a hard stop at noon, you can skedaddle. So thank you all for being here. All right. This is just a reminder for the sign-in sheet and to make sure that we track that you have attended today. And if at some point you're not able to attend, we appreciate some people have sent us emails and said our staff have an all staff meeting or something conflicting at that time. And then we just know that that's why there was no one from that specific agency there. So, all right, I am going to take a toy away from my animal. So, the good thing I gave the disclaimer. Thank you. Okay, so move on to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to acknowledge today that it's important to us at DELC and to Brandon and I to acknowledge that it is National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. And also on the second Monday in October, it is National Indigenous Peoples Day. And so I just wanted to highlight those in our meeting together today and encourage you to explore if there are events or opportunities within your community, wherever locally in Oregon that you live, to see if there's something you can attend related to those celebrations of heritage and culture. And yeah, I always like to use time to kind of reflect and do some of my own digging and research for just my own personal learning and growth. So just wanted to acknowledge, and I wanted to give space if anyone would like to come off mute and share anything, maybe an event that's happening or something personal in relation to these honorings or celebrations. And there's no pressure. Just thought I'd open the floor for a moment. And if you want to put something in the chat as well, you're welcome to do that.
Hola, buenos días. No sé si estoy en el canal de español o en el de inglés. No sé en cuál estoy, perdón.
It's perfect. Yeah, we can hear you and the
Ah,
interpretation.
gracias. Sí, yo quisiera compartir, estamos súper emocionados de celebrar aquí en la Coalición para la Igualdad de Salem Kaiser lo que es el mes de la hispanidad, especialmente en el mes del 15 de septiembre, como todas las personas que sabemos que somos de México, celebramos la independencia de México. Y con el personal tuvimos una celebración muy interna, hicimos un convivio, comimos pozole y estuvimos conviviendo y estuvimos mirando por televisión el grito de independencia de nuestro presidente en México. Gracias.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Yadira. I appreciate that. And yeah, sharing with all of us how it's important to you and how you have celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month. So yeah, would anyone else like to share? Okay. If anyone thinks of anything, feel free to. Oh, oh, Monday. Okay. Thank you for sharing that as well. Yeah, please use the chat to share any additional pieces. And yeah, and I can't see the chat well because of me sharing my screen. So if anyone wants to call something out, feel free. So, okay. Again, feel free to continue sharing in the chat, and I'm going to move to the next slide today. So that was kind of an icebreaker, but I also had another short one. So for kind of our waterfall in the chat icebreaker, I would love if you could share any favorite fall related activity to do with children in your programs. I know when I led groups for parents and children, we often had specific activities that were kind of go-to activities. So I'd love to hear what you enjoy doing. Brandon, I'm wondering if you would not mind reading.
I was about to say, did you want me to read them?
Yeah.
So we've got 4 different groups going to the pumpkin patch. So that seems to be nice and popular. And then also decorating the classroom with fall foliage and, oh, a fun run each October. That's great. And, oh, autumn nature walks. The leaves, when they turn gold. BPI also does a yearly pumpkin patch and a Friendsgiving for family, or, well, they're not my families, they're your families. For their families, there it is. PJ parties, creating pumpkin volcanoes. I want to create pumpkin volcanoes. Scavenger hunts. Oh, great. That's fun. Also, please send me how to make pumpkin volcanoes because I want to do that on my own.
That sounds really fun. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I think that's fun for you to be able to read what other people are doing and maybe spark some creative ideas for fall programming. I think someone mentioned scavenger hunt. I'm not sure. Okay.
Yes.
That was one of my favorite things, like printing out a sheet with different types, like different colored fall leaves, different items that you might find outside, and then going on a walk with the kids and trying to search for them.
Yeah, and Kamisha also shared shortly right before all of the activities save the date for Indigenous Peoples Day celebration up in Barbie's Village in Portland. There'll be a free dinner, a children's powwow, and entertainment. So that is very fun to know. So thank you
Oh,
for sharing
wow.
that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's something that community can attend. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, and keep those things coming if you do know of any events or anything else you'd like to share. I'm gonna go now.
me.
That brings us to Brandon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Kamisha. Okay, so I've had a couple of folks who, and by folks, I mean agencies, who have reached out about next year's budget and what that's going to look like. And is there any increases and any questions along those lines? And I get to be the person that tells you no, because we are being held to a 1% cap increase across DELC. So, which for all of DELC, so not just our grants funds, but that's also employee cost and department cost, which is a $6 million increase overall for all employees, all grants, all everything, with the exception of Virtua 5 housing and some EDRC expansion based on some governor's choices. But just kind of wanted to explain how that worked for y'all. And so the ARB, the agency request budget, was released to us on September 1st, and we got to know that we are being held to a 1% increase. So that is where that 6 million and change fund is coming from. So we have until the governor's recommended budget comes out, or we've now submitted that, and the next step will be the governor's recommended budget, which will come out December 1st. And so while there is possible there's an increase across boards, we won't know anything of that, because as much as I would love to have a direct line to the governor to just be like, yo, my folks need money, please. I'm not that big of a person in the agency, so I do not have that. So when we get that, we'll know a little more. And then as of November 5th, we will know the legislator that we are working with for the next few years after the election is over. And then they will make the official budget based on the governor's recommendation. And then we will know the final amounts for the following grant cycle. So, and so you'll have those ideally well before the end of June. So that way it's already signed and returned. So that way come July 1st, you all will be ready to go. Is there any questions about that? I know this is very entry level kind of information, but wanted to give an opportunity for that in case there was.
I had a question for the next grant cycle funding. Is it going to be a competitive bid process for this next grant cycle, or is it just going to be
At this time, it's just my apologies, because this will be my first like doing the grant biennium or grant year cycle. So because it just takes process. So for this year, I know that we are just extending out if the grantees still would like to continue forward.
And will it be a 2-year extension like it was this last time? Or
It depends on how the legislator decides to do funding.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of that I would love to have more answers on, but for that, because if they only agree to funding X amount, we don't want to do a biennium without the guarantee that there's going to be that second year of funding.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
and I'm not saying that I'm worried about funding, but just the way that the legislative works.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. And yeah, Gabriella, that is kind of the hope, just because it does make it easier, but I'm not sure if that is how because we are a smaller grant, I'm not sure. And I don't mean smaller grant as in the agency, I just mean the amount of money that this grant is. I'm not sure if it'll be a biennium or a yearly at this point.
Last year, sorry, I'm so- hopefully you can hear me. This last year.
And Allison, you came off mute. Is there?
Oh, yeah,
Question?
but I thought I heard someone speaking, so I just didn't want to talk over them.
Sorry.
I'm just curious. I'm sure that you have let us know this, but like, when do I need to be aware of next applications or next extensions? I know you were saying it won't be a new application, it'll be an
Yeah, so
extension. I'm just,
right, so that will come out once we know the budget. Like as soon as we know the budget amount, we can start working on grant numbers. And this is across the board for Delk,
Okay.
not just for that. So I hate to use the phrase because I personally hate cliches. So the more I use them, it like grinds my like little heart a little. But you'll know when we know, which is not super comforting. I do
okay, as long
realize, but
as
that
long,
is where we are.
no,
Yeah, you have not missed it.
that's actually fantastic. I just want, that's all. I'm just checking in here because I'm new to the whole process. So thank you.
No worries. Yeah.
Okay.
And Gabrielle, were you trying to ask a question? Because if so, I
was.
couldn't
I'm
hear you very well. So I do apologize.
Sorry, I'm sick. Last year or the last school year, we were able to increase the budget with the COLA increase. I think it was like a 1.5% or per year. Is that that I'm assuming that's still something that might occur in the following years?
Right. And it may, we just don't know what the legislative, because we don't, at this point, so I'm trying to keep my state hat on. We don't know how the election's going to unfold. So depending on the legislator that, is walking in November 5th, it'll be their decision on the COLAs and all of that. So it is a little funky in terms of that, if that makes sense. I know that is part of the ask that will be asked, and I hope they do a COLA because I don't know if you all know, it's expensive out here. So I appreciate COLAs, and I know you and your staff do, and your ability to like operate. So I know that we are like in the amount of power that we have in our positions, we are all definitely angling for at least COLAs if we don't get some sort of increase. So. Any other quick questions before I hand it off to Emma?
I think, Brandon, I'm gonna ask that any other questions, we wait until the 12 to 12:15
okay.
period, just because I realize we're a little behind and I don't want to cut too much into the evaluation team's time.
Got it. Okay. And also everybody has my email. You can
Yeah.
also reach out.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. So I'm going to keep my updates very short due to time, but I wanted to announce that we now have a new day and time for what we're calling ECEF social, but it's our office hours essentially. So we realized that not many people were, I think one person the whole time I've worked here has signed on to office hours, but we get lots of emails with questions and requests for meetings. And so I want to remind you that we do have set aside time for office hours. We're happy, obviously, to meet with you at any other time that works, but I want more people to hopefully be able to take advantage of the time that we have scheduled to connect with each other, potentially, if enough people are attending, and just to connect with us and ask any questions, share anything that you're wanting to share. And we also realized that it was falling, being on the Monday that it was falling on like all of the big Monday holidays. So we changed the day and time so that hopefully it would eliminate that from happening. So it's now going to be on the fourth Wednesday of each month from 3 to 4:30. So towards the end of the day as opposed to early afternoon. And we're hoping that will work for more people. And as of this afternoon, the link will be updated on the ECEF portal to reflect that. So that's how we don't send out like a group invite since it's through Teams. But you can access the link through the ECEF portal. It says right at the top on the left, our office hours, and you can click the link to join. You could even add on your own calendar a little like reminder during that time block each month. And I think you could put the link in there yourself. I'm not sure exactly how that part works. And last but not least, and I unfortunately will save questions until the end due to time, but just want to reiterate, I know I emailed everyone, but in case you missed it, the monthly report has been revised and released for a second time. And again, won't go into much detail right now, but we worked really hard to make some changes to make it a little more user-friendly and to take into account the feedback that we received from all of you. And while still collecting the additional necessary information that we need in order to ensure that we have accurate data to share out about the work that you're doing. So I just want to mention also that the 3 old reports, because now it's down to 1, combined into 1. The 3 old reports are still on the portal. They're underneath the new report. So please be sure not to mistakenly go to those reports. We left them on there because for some people who might be missing reports from the last year of this biennium, we need you to use the old reports to match our system. But anything from here on out, you'll be using the 1 monthly revised report that we have. And again, I know there might be questions. We'll hold those to the end because I want to pass it on to Lorelei and Alexis. So thank you. All right, you're on, and just let me know when to change the slides over.
Yeah, sure thing. Hi,
Okay.
everyone. As Emma said, I'm here as well as Lorelei to talk about the findings from the soft launch process. And yeah, we're good to go with the next slide. So I wanted to start off with a very big thank you from me and Lorelei. We had so many participants in this process, and we know it was voluntary, so that's still great to see you all want to be a part of it. And hopefully, you know, it prepared you for the upcoming, and also you learned a few things doing this with me. So thank you all so much. We really, really do appreciate you all taking the time to do this. Next slide. So as I mentioned, about 80% of ECEF grantees participated, which is great to see. That's about 20 out of the 25 ECEF grantees. 3 were working on getting ready for 2025. Sorry, 3 out of the 5 that weren't able to participate this time around said that they are intending to participate next year, which is great. 1 of those grantees were not applicable for this process because they had language revitalization only. And I see here that someone in the chat can't hear me, Allison. Can everyone else hear me? Yeah. Maybe.
You might be just a little low.
Yeah. Okay. Try to speak up a little bit. Hopefully she gets that figured out. Well, yeah, one of the grantees didn't participate because their program of language revitalization only didn't fit into the criteria. And then we only had one unresponsive grantee. Close to 800 families participated, which is a great big high amount there. And that's about 38% of the ESEF funded families. Ready for the next. So I'm going to be jumping into the family feedback tool that we shared with the grantees as part of the evaluation soft rollout process. And Lorelai is going to be talking about the outcome results, outcomes and findings from that tool. So the family feedback was pretty much just as the title says, feedback on the programs. And we heard a lot of very overwhelmingly positive feedback. 96 to 98% of families rated the program really good or fantastic on every single item. And almost 100% of families said they would recommend the program to other families, which is just amazing to see. And we're good to go for the next slide. From the findings, a very highlighted point that we saw throughout the open-ended responses as well as the quantitative responses was the key role of culture and language. So about 97% of families said that their culture and identities were acknowledged and affirmed. 96% said that their cultures and identities were reflected in program staff, as well as program materials and activities. And 97 and 98% of families also said that they felt accepted for who they are, that their values and beliefs were respected by the program, and that they were able to learn in ways that worked for them and felt comfortable. So we have some quotes here that we obtained from the open-ended responses, and these are just some beautiful quotes. I'm going to read just two of them here. The first one says, "The cultural and racial identity of my child is reflected by program staff and admin. My child is learning and growing by and with people who look like her, a gold mine in Oregon." The connection to culture and community. It feels like a family versus teachers at a school. I really trust sending my children to the program, and that is a great feeling. So there was some very awesome quotes there that we did receive. When we asked parents what did they like best about the program, we heard a resounding everything. There was also lots of mentions about cultural and linguistic responsiveness, the feeling of being genuinely welcomed and respected, as well as the numerous benefits that their children and themselves receive by participating. So when we got a little more specific on what they liked best for their child, we heard a lot that parents enjoyed the opportunities for their child to interact with other children and learn social emotional skills, build independence and confidence, build academic skills, prepare for school, experience focused time with the parents, and also to have fun and play. And when we asked the parents what they enjoyed best for themselves, we heard a lot of different themes, and mostly they were focused around opportunities to focus on their child, set aside specific time for play with them, interact with and get support from other parents, learn about effective parenting, learn fun ways to support early learning, as well as to be part of a community. And when we asked caregivers what might they change about the program, there was also another big resounding nothing, which is really great to see. And when we did see, other suggestions, there was a lot of just expanding programming, expanding things that ECEF programs were already doing, such as adding hours, more days, before and after care, adding classrooms and sites, and just making the programming more available to more families. There was some other suggestions that we saw, including to provide more concrete assistance like food, transportation, provide higher quality materials in the classroom. An example of this is better food, facilitate more opportunities for families to gather together, expand programming for parents, caregivers, and adding additional topic areas, and to incorporate even more language and cultures into the classroom. So I'm now going to pass it over to Lorelai, who is going to talk about the outcomes tools and those findings.
Thank you, Alexis. And you know, I just want to again acknowledge what incredible feedback this is. It was actually really fun for me and Alexis to analyze this data. We just kept kind of cracking up. We're like, this is amazing. This is like feedback like you never get, and especially around the cultural and linguistic responsiveness pieces, that families would be having such a meaningful experience there, and something that we know is so rare in mainstream dominant programs. So I just invite you all to really sit with that and celebrate it, and just feel that impact that you're really having for families. It's pretty amazing to read through the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments that families left. It clearly means a lot to them. And so I'm going to talk about the outcome piece. So that was the second caregiver tool that you all rolled out during this soft launch. And as you might remember, this is the one we called reflections, where we asked families to reflect on their own growth in the course of the program. And that's the tool that we're using to measure impacts or outcomes, but we made a very intentional decision not to use that language because it has this kind of harmful legacy or implication that parents could be being judged. So this is why we're really falling back on this language of reflections. Just a reminder there, because that was another important part, I think, of the design process to frame it that way. And you know, the ELG has been super clear from the beginning that we really wanted all of these tools to be meaningful and to not cause harm. And I think it's Emma who's advancing. Next slide, please. So we really focused on growth. That was the underlying hope, was that this experience of completing this questionnaire would help provide an opportunity for families to reflect on their own growth, and that this would push back on these kind of deficit-based assessments that see parents and caregivers as always like needing some kind of improvement, that it would really communicate a more supportive stance and help us pivot away from any possible feelings of shame toward really supporting self-compassion, and again, encouraging self-reflection rather than this idea of external judgment. Next slide. So what did close to 800 parents, that's how many folks participated in the soft launch, tell us about the impacts of the program for them? So there were 15 questions in total that were a part of this tool. And on 13 out of 15 of those questions, an overwhelming majority, more than 90% of families agreed or strongly agreed that they had grown in all of these areas. So they had knowledge gains, they developed new skills, had greater self-awareness, greater self-regulation, self-care, self-efficacy. You know, they felt more competent, more parenting confidence. Again, this big theme around cultural and linguistic pride and connection, learned new self-advocacy skills, and got more involved in their communities. So the overall message here is that families clearly, I mean, very clearly, see themselves learning and growing in really important ways in all of your programs. And, oh, sorry, I was getting a phone call. We know that this is exactly what you all have been working so hard to support and facilitate. And based on this early data, we know it's preliminary, right? It was just the soft rollout, but it definitely seems to be working. Next slide, please. So in addition to this kind of big headline about the overall positive findings, we also really wanted to highlight for you what families shared about the key role of culture and language and what it has played for them in all of your programs. Since supporting positive cultural and linguistic identity, we know is such a key component of your programs. So as you might remember, the Parent Caregiver Reflections tool includes a whole series of questions related to cultural and linguistic identity that, again, you would almost never see on kind of a mainstream outcome tool, even though we know that it is so core to families' experiences. Next slide, please. And on that note, we wanted to actually share with you all, in case you don't have some of these references, all of the research, the published research that's really starting to come out that tells us about the importance of supporting cultural and linguistic identity and its key role in program quality in particular. And we know that this is because cultural and linguistic identity is foundational to literally everything else. And it's one of these things we were reflecting, this is very intuitive, right? And I know that you all already know this. I'm not sure that we really need research to quote unquote prove it. Nonetheless, it can also be really powerful in an advocacy setting. And I know you're all involved, of course, in trying to build support for your programs, to know that there is this published literature out there. So we wanted to be sure to share it with you. Next slide, please. Okay, so what did we hear specifically around the racial, ethnic, and linguistic identity questions in this soft launch? It was pretty astounding. So again, the vast majority of families participating in your programs agreed or strongly agreed that since participating in the program, they feel proud of cultures, identities, and languages, felt better able to support children in learning about and being proud of our cultures, languages, and identities, and feeling better prepared to stand up for one's child and family and for what they need. And likewise, 91% agreed or strongly agreed, I feel more connected to and supported by my chosen communities and or cultural groups. So again, I think this is pretty amazing. It's not the kind of feedback that you're likely to get on a mainstream dominant program. And I think it may actually turn out to be one of the most powerful findings and messages that we will be able to disseminate from this evaluation. Next slide, thank you. Okay, so last but certainly not least, we really wanted to share with you what we also heard in the open-ended responses. So like Alexis mentioned, and I think I also mentioned, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It was pretty amazing how many families chose to write in their own responses in response to these open-ended invitations. And we all know it's important to have those numbers, right? Especially for policymakers. But I think you'll also agree that it's in these open-ended responses, it's in families' own words, where we really see the data come alive and where we find the most meaning. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we did our best to try and summarize this open-ended data in a pretty short period of time, just given how much data there was. So our strategy was to go through and try and kind of clump it up into these categories of responses, starting with the first question, which was, what is an important thing that you learned in the program? We definitely saw a whole set of responses around child development and parenting. So families saying that they had learned to really prioritize time with their child, to be present, have fun, that sharing culture and language is really important. They should be encouraged to do that. A lot of folks talked about learning a new level of respect for their child, as well as a better understanding of age-appropriate behavior, and that it's normal for children to develop according to different timelines, that children should take healthy risks, try new experiences, and that children are capable of more than you might think. A lot of folks also talked about the importance of routine and starting to implement new routines. Next slide. Then another set of responses was around learning some things related to social emotional skills and well-being. Lots and lots of folks talked about learning new strategies for calming down, for becoming more patient, learning about how to support one's children in managing their own feelings. So many people talked about the importance of self-care and really giving themselves permission to take care of themselves, to ask for help, to recognize that mental health is as important as physical health. Lots and lots of people talked about learning more effective communication strategies. And then overall, this big theme around gaining greater self-confidence, both as a parent, but just more generally. Next slide. Then you'll see how this kind of goes. There was so much there. There really was, which I think also speaks to the importance of including these open-ended questions, because it tells you a whole lot more, I think, than, again, just those numbers, as important as the numbers are. So around early learning, families talked about learning that children are learning from the earliest moment, the importance of being their child's first teacher, and modeling interest in education, reading with children. Also, a lot of talk about understanding, having a better understanding of kindergarten expectations and how to support children in getting ready for kindergarten. And then a lot of folks also talked about learning how to better navigate supportive resources in the community. Next slide. Okay, so that was in response to the question, what is something that you learned? And of course, we know that the real kind of rubber hits the road moment is when we move from learning to actually putting things into action. So we had another question that was specifically asking, what is a change that you made? So what's a change in response to what you learned? And again, we kind of chunked it up into these categories of responses. So around parenting, we heard folks talking about spending more quality time with their children now, doing more learning activities, reading more, becoming more flexible with their kids, while at the same time putting more rules and routines in place. So kind of that idea of striking the balance. So many folks talked about exercising more patience. I think, like I already said, staying calm, really coming from a place of better understanding, and working with their child around their feelings. Lots of folks also talked about changing like communication patterns across the whole family. So changing the way that they communicate with both their children and their partner. Next slide. So social emotional growth. Lots and lots of responses here in terms of actual changes made. So folks wrote in that they were learning to listen more, that they were learning to speak more of their home language, A lot of families talked about how involvement in the program had really inspired them to try and focus on that for themselves, not just for their children. Again, people talked repeatedly about being better able to manage their own emotions and stress, asking for help more often, and really taking better care of themselves. And as a result, becoming less worried about parenting. There's a lot of, I just don't have the same kind of anxiety. People talking about gaining confidence, feeling more empowered, and even going more places, getting out of the house and having more experiences that might have felt too intimidating before the program. Next slide. And then, of course, there was a whole set of responses around connecting with language, culture, and community. So many people wrote about making it a priority, like I said, to speak their home language, becoming more involved in the various communities that they identify with, intentionally working with children on those home language skills, and attending more cultural events. Again, making that more of a priority and really going out of their way to participate. Next slide. And then, like Alexis, I wanted to just include a selection of quotes. Again, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these quotes, and I'll just read a couple, but I wanted to share them with you all because I know that they will, again, just so deeply resonate. I feel more confident in the way we all communicate at home. I have practiced ways to help us work through stress without hurting ourselves as adults and without hurting others. I didn't know that stress brings illness. One change that I have is more confidence in myself. I also know how I can help my children with everything that the program has helped me with. Next slide. Listening to my daughter with more respect and patience, and giving less importance to things that can wait, and giving more importance to her emotions and thoughts, and helping her recognize her emotions and face them. I got my child an early Head Start, and now as of today, I started Portland Community College. I have been proud to attend cultural events as a family, discussing and acknowledging history and the present. So that was a lot, and I'm sorry that we need to kind of rush through it. I just wanted to at least pause for a moment to invite you all again to just let this kind of sit and invite you to give each other and yourselves a huge round of applause. Like I said, it's just been a pleasure analyzing this data. I mean, it's confirmed what you all have shared for the last couple of years, that this is what you're trying to do. And it's kind of amazing to now have this data coming in that is really confirming the powerful impacts that families are reporting they truly are experiencing in your programs. So this is preliminary data, and we won't be sharing it outside publicly because it was for the soft launch. But you know that we have our official data collection that is coming up in 2025. And that will be the data collection that we do for the report that goes to the legislature at the end of the summer of 2025. So I think this is a really exciting kind of sneak peek of what I expect we will see when we do the whole kit and caboodle next spring. Speaking of which, just a quick reminder, we of what is on tap, right, for next year's data collection. As I just said, that will be our first round of the quote unquote official data collection. We'll be rolling out both the family tools and the new child outcomes tool. So there'll be 3 tools in all this time around. They'll both be collected only once near the program end, just like we did for the soft launch. So looking at April 2025 for that data collection. This time around, we are hoping for more like 60 to 70% participation of families and children. This time we had close to 40%. And the only reason for that is that it just strengthens the data. So it will make the findings more compelling to outside audiences if you all are able to support a higher rate of participation. Now, having said all that, our foundational commitment is to it always being voluntary. So we never would want you to pressure any family to participate. It could just be that there are families that with a little more encouragement or who didn't even know about it might be more interested in participating this time around. Next May and July, through July, just like we did for the soft launch, we'll be focused on data entry, analysis, and report writing. And then it's at the end of August that that report goes to the legislature. And we did want to note here that this deadline that we have to the legislature is a hard deadline. There's just no wiggle room in that. And that is the reason why, unfortunately, we have this April due date for the data. We would love to push it back further if we could, but it just then doesn't leave enough time to do the data entry, analysis, and report writing. So we apologize for that. And there's not a lot we can do about it. Okay, last slide. So what happens next? Alexis is going to start reaching out to you all again this month. Do some review of your experience with the soft launch and how that all went. Troubleshooting any issues that came up for you during that process. See if you can tweak it to see if there are ways that that could be improved. And then to start planning in particular for the child level data collection, since that will be a new piece that gets added to this process. And just like you did for the family and caregiver tools, it'll be a process of looking at any needed adjustments to the tool, if there are needs for language translation, to start really thinking through the process for collecting the data and then identifying any staff training or support needs. And then you can just keep meeting with Alexis throughout until we're ready to implement all 3 tools around April. Just a quick reminder, if you have any questions, we do have this evaluation updates page, and you are more than welcome to reach out to me or Alexis at any time. And I know we had hoped to save some time for questions or comments. Emma, I don't know if that fits into your plan and folks may need to leave. But I would open it.
Yeah, go ahead and open it to questions and then we can segue into any other questions related just to ECEF in general after that.
Wonderful.
I'm just so impressed by like the family responses from it all. So I know I threw it in the chat, but like I'm just so impressed about like what this means for the families y'all are serving, because like obviously, you know, working one-to-one with your families, you see the impact, but to like see the impact on paper in front of you is fantastic. So it's really cool to see that. So I hope you all are super proud of that.
Lorelai, we did get a question in chat from May at Urco if they can get the slides so that we can share the information with the staff. Yes, if all ECEF grantees.
Absolutely. I think Emma always shares the slides out. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. And there's been a little bit of an like email weird bandwidth issue with some people receiving them. And so I'm now saving them as PDFs instead of the PowerPoint slideshow. And you should be able to receive them that way. And if not, we'll have to troubleshoot another solution. But yes, I always send out the slideshow presentation to everyone and the recorded webinar. So yeah, you'll be able to read and copy those quotes if you want to afterwards. Okay. If there are no questions for Lorelai and Alexis, just thank you so much for your sharing. As Brandon said, these are amazing, amazing pieces to read, the feedback from the families about the programs, and we're just so impressed to hear the impact of the work that you are all doing in community. So yeah, I'm glad that we were able to take the time to go over some of that in depth with you, and you'll be able to look more closely at them when I send out the slideshow. So I'm trying to see, it should be recording, but I'm wanting to stop recording and I don't see it on there. But I'm gonna wrap up the meeting and then we won't record like the questions period for whoever stays at the end. I've been trying to figure out how to best maneuver that. But I'm